Typically, movie lists on the internet are centered around genres or finding the best film of a particular year. While those certainly work well enough, they don't take as broad an approach as possible. Finding the right movie from each decade considers a film's box office draw, critical acclaim, awards received, and cultural impact. Odds are, many won't agree with these picks, so load the comments with the movies you think should be at the top of a particular decade. Top 10 movies better than the best 10 1920s. Metropolis, F. Lang. 1927. Full silent movie. Restored HD, film muto completo. Restaurado HD. You might not think of the 1920s as a decade of outstanding cinematic achievement, but this was when movies like Battleship Potemkin, The Cabinet of the best film of the 1920s is Fritz Lang's gorgeous expressionist sci-fi drama, Metropolis. This was one of the pioneers of the science fiction genre. While it lacked in sound, it more than made up with its stunning visualization of a dystopian urban society. Metropolis took 17 months to complete, and the filming process was something of a nightmare. Despite this, Lang managed to complete the film with nearly 2.5 times the original budget. The film pioneered numerous visual effects techniques, including the Shufton process, named after the film's VFX artist, Eugen Shufton, which used mirrors to reflect actors onto miniature sets. Metropolis did not do well upon release. H.G. Wells reviewed the film, saying it was foolishness, cliché, platitude, and muddlement about mechanical progress and progress in general. Decades later, several restorations of the original film have brought it before modern eyes, and it has since been recognized as one of the greatest movies ever. 9 1930s. The Wizard of Oz Somewhere Over the Rainbow. The Wizard of Oz, 1/8, movie clip, 1939. HD. Some of the greatest films of all time were released in the 1930s, including Duck Soup, King Kong, Bringing Up Baby, M, Gone with the Wind, and City Lights. While some of the stage plays and silent films were exceptional, they don't hold a candle to the musical directed by Victor Fleming. The film's use of black-white film being interrupted with glorious Technicolor was only one of the fantastic elements that make the movie stand out among its peers. It's probably safe to say that most people alive today have little to no experience watching movies from the 1930s, but there's a caveat to that statement. Odds are, nearly everyone has seen The Wizard of Oz at least once in their lives, which easily makes it the most influential movie of the decade. The Library of Congress declared that it has been seen by more viewers than any other movie. 8 1940s. Citizen Kane, 1941. Official trailer number 1. Orson Welles' movie The 1940s kicked off with Charlie Chaplin's masterpiece, The Great Dictator, and that was just the beginning. Other notable films from the decade include Double Indemnity, It's a Wonderful Life, The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, The Grapes of Wrath, and Casablanca. There's tons to love about the 1940s, but you can't neglect what many call the greatest movie ever made. When Orson Welles narrated The War of the Worlds, he attracted the attention of RKO Pictures. The studio wanted to work with him so badly that they offered him a contract to act, produce, write, and direct 2 films. This was something the reluctant Welles couldn't resist, and his first film was Citizen Kane. Like many beloved classics, it didn't do remarkably well upon release. It was a critical success, but a box office bomb, having failed to recoup its costs. After all, this was the decade Some Like It Hot, Singin' in the Rain, North by Northwest, and Rear Window were released. Each of those films stands the test of time, but the best the decade offered comes from director Billy Wilder's classic 1950 film, Sunset Boulevard. This is one of those movies that you may not have seen, but you've definitely seen clips of, as it's one of the best black comedy film noir films ever produced. The movie centers around Joe Gills, a screenwriter who's drawn into the life of a former silent film star, Norma Desmond. It features some excellent cameos of silent movie stars from the previous era to sell it, and it totally works, thanks to Buster Keaton, Anna Q. Nielsen, and H.B. Warner. Sunset Boulevard was highly praised when it was released, and it's often considered one of the best movies of all time. It was among the group of the first films selected for preservation in the National Film Registry, and there's little wonder why. It also featured some of the best westerns ever made, thanks to the rise of the spaghetti western, with films like The Good, The Bad, and The Ugly. Still, the one that easily clinches the top spot is none other than Alfred Hitchcock's legendary classic, Psycho. If there was any doubt about Hitchcock's storytelling before Psycho, the one or two people who filled that group were silenced by this movie. It's easily the director's most famous film, and it often tops the list as his best movie, though Rear Window and North by Northwest aren't far behind it. Psycho enjoyed a stellar box office performance, making $32 million off a budget of little more than $800,000. It's often considered to be one of the greatest, and first, slasher films ever made. Its influence can be seen in every significant slasher thriller released since 1960. 5 1970s. The Godfather trailer. HD. There were tons of notable films released in the 1970s, including Star Wars, Annie Hall, Alien, Apocalypse Now, and A Clockwork Orange. This was the decade of The Sting, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and Rocky, so choosing the best film is no easy task. Still, the greatest film of the 1970s is and must be Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather. If you can get through film school without watching this movie, there's a good chance you were in a coma for a significant amount of time. It's one of the most studied and beloved films of all time, and it's an epic masterpiece. The film chronicles the Corleone family from 1945 to 1955, which sees the rise of Michael Corleone as the family's new dawn. The movie has everything from violence to romance and everything possible in between. It's because of The Godfather that he wound up in Apocalypse Now, Superman, the movie, and Last Tango in Paris. The Godfather's influence on modern cinema and popular culture is widespread. It's often considered one of the greatest movies of all time while also standing as the best gangster movie ever made. Its sequel came out in the same decade, and while it's absolutely amazing, it all started with The Godfather. There were terrific fantasy, sci-fi, comedy, and family films, but the one that easily beats out the competition is Steven Spielberg's Raiders of the Lost Ark. The movie has romance, action, adventure, and comedy all mixed into a tale of biblical archaeology, and it works. It wasn't just a great movie, it also gave the world an amazing character. The movie was a huge success when it was released in 1981. It had a significant impact on cinema released throughout the decade, which saw multiple imitators in films like Romancing the Stone. That influence continued into the following decade, with movies like The Mummy and Indiana Jones. Influence continues to this day. Raiders of the Lost Ark created a franchise, and it's one of the best movies of its genre. A fifth film is slated for release in 2022. 3 1990s. The Shawshank Redemption. Trailer, 1994, HQ in a decade that gave the world Pulp Fiction, Schindler's List, Forrest Gump, Fight Club, The Silence of the Lambs, and plenty more. determining the best film of the 90s is no easy task. The 1990s were full of intense action, beautifully written dramas, evocative thrillers, and gorgeous sci-fi, but the film that takes the decade has got to be The Shawshank Redemption. Frank Darabont's adaptation of Stephen King's novella, Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, tells the story of Andy Dufresne, a man convicted for murdering his wife and her lover. Thanks to Listverse, where I can find new articles and share with you here. Source link is in description. Go and check it out.